Okay. Okay, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I've got a flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
flag of the
of the
United
United States of America
and to
and
the
to the
republic
Republic
for which
for
it
which
stands,
stands
one
one nation
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
That's a little difficult to do remotely and coordinate it.
it is. Okay, roll call. Keith,
Chair Flickinger,
here.
Vice Chair Vondergraaf,
Here,
Maggie Bird,
Here,
Bobby Williams. Okay, do not hear Mr. Williams. Steve Weiss,
Here.
Robert Trimborn,
Here.
Steve Tannehill.
Here.
Okay, and for the record, Nanette Metz and Gary Jacobs have been excused from this meeting, but you do have a quorum.
Okay. Next is agenda review.
No changes on our part at this point.
Okay. And next is the approval of minutes from the January 3rd meeting and the I suppose we should do one at a time. Do I hear anyone agree?
I move to approve the January 3rd regular meeting minutes. Steve Weiss.
Second, Bob Trimborn.
All those in favor?
aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and the approval of meetings for January 31st. Do I have someone to move to approve those meetings?
Move approval, Adriana Vandergraaf.
second, Maggie.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed?
Steve Weiss abstains.
Steve White, okay.
And Jim, I need to abstain as well, as I was not there.
Okay,
Steve Tannehill.
I think we still have a,
Yes, that motion passes unanimously with 2 abstentions by Commissioner Weiss and Tannehill.
right. Okay. Do we have a public comment period?
At this time, nobody's online in the queue, but Anna's going to read something and we'll see if that changes.
Okay,
If you would like to be added to the public comment queue, please be connected via Zoom. If not already connected and wish to make a public comment, you can find the Zoom link on the last page of the meeting agenda, which can be found at vcairports.org/meeting-calendar. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 5, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. I do have some written comments that I can read. I will begin with Mr. Art Munson. To whom it may concern, I would like to express my frustration on the constant flow of touch and go aircraft over our community of Seabridge and Oxnard. From my understanding, aircraft are to remain north of Woolley, but seldom do. Many times their altitude seems to be much lower than the requirement. Thank you. End of comment from Art Munson. The next comment is from Phyllis Singer. It reads, Dear TNG, I have lived at Oxnard Shores for over 30 years. Knowing the Oxnard Airport was in our flight path was never a big issue until these last few years. Not only the safety issue, but the noise has affected our quality of life here, especially the flight schools which come from other cities' airports. Some days it's nonstop touch and go sequences, circling paths, flying over and over again, low over houses. spewing out their carbon emissions. Enough is enough. Why is Oxnard always have to bear the projects that other cities would never allow? Tired of seeing Oxnard over the years being taken advantage of. We need to start taking a stand. Sincerely, Phyllis Singer, end of comment. The next comment is from Kelly Baxter. It reads, hello, I reside in the Harbor Island condominiums directly off Harbor Island Lane, and we are hearing many flyovers every day. When on the balcony or walking around Perimeter Park, we are forced to stop conversations due to incredibly noisy planes flying overhead, often and low elevations. I ask for your assistance by working with the FAA to encourage proper training of the flight school management, the student pilots, and the Oxnard air traffic controllers to encourage safe and sane flying. Secondly, I ask that we work together as a commission and as a community to mandate quieter and newer planes to reduce noise and toxic emissions from leaded patrol. I look forward to hearing your progress. Thank you, Kelly Baxter. End of comment. The next comment is from Mr. Randy Scuria. It reads, good evening all. I have been a full-time resident of Oxnard Shores for over 35 years and have seen and heard every kind of noisemaker that's taken off from Oxnard Airport. 3 decades ago, it was the shuttle jets going to LAX all hours of the day and night that drove us crazy. As of late, we have been invaded with flight schools doing their repetitive touch and go racetrack pattern takeoffs over our houses. In November of last year, we received a newsletter, thank you, Steve Tannehill, stating that a new noise abatement procedure for touch and goes at Oxnard Airport had been implemented. My neighbors and I were ecstatic at the thought that something had been done to curb the flight noise over our houses. To my surprise, I noticed that most flights were in fact adhering to the new guidelines, and if not, we had a violation complaint hotline phone number to the Department of Airports. Toward the middle of January, it seemed there were way more violators of the new procedures than there were those adhering to them. So I called the complaint line and got someone to return my call to explain what exactly happens when we call in. The bottom line is this new procedure is voluntary, not mandated by the FAA in writing, making it unenforceable, and there are no violators. I stopped calling. The airport facility director guidelines states, in quotes, no turns before reaching 743 feet, end quote, which makes me ask why most planes are banking left over the houses. Why not right over empty farmland? And that is the end of the 250 word limit for Mr. Randy Scuria. The next comment is from Eleanor Crilly. It reads, I've lived in Oxnard for 13 years. The planes flying overhead on weekends was never a problem. Then in 2020, the plane noise increased to the point that I have to shut my windows and doors because of the constant noise. Every day, morning to night, I'm concerned not only about the noise, but the pollution from the planes. When I found out the increase was due to Camarillo, Santa Monica, and Santa Barbara airports restricting student flights, I was beyond angry. Why are the residents of Oxnard treated as less deserving than those who live in the above named cities? This is so unfair and discriminatory to Oxnard citizens. Thank you, Eleanor Crilly. End of comment. And the last comment is from Mr. David Cronshaw, and it reads, Aviation Advisory Commission. As one of the neighborhood council members who monitors the Oxnard Airport flight and CFI training patterns on a daily basis, I wanted to acknowledge the progress that Keith Freitas, Dave Nafee, and the airport team has made with flight training patterns adhering to the Oxnard Airport voluntary noise abatement procedures. The good news is that on the weekends, we are now seeing a few flights making right turns after departure and conducting their touch and goes using right traffic, as well as more patterns staying above or north of Woolley. However, the bad news is that overall, there are still many flight schools and CFIs originating out of Santa Paula, Camarillo, Santa Monica, and Van Nuys, who are consistently ignoring the Oxnard voluntary noise abatement procedures and training way south of Woolley and turning downwind directly over Oxnard shores. During the week, we are not seeing any training right traffic, even when it is safe and there are no other aircraft in the general area. Using the multiple flight tracking apps to monitor the training patterns, we are also seeing the number of aircraft electing to hide their tail numbers is increasing. This has coincided with the increase in public complaints in the last year. As a follow-up, it would also be beneficial if the Department of Airports could address this commission and give a status update on the progress of contacting the schools and CFIs, making them aware of the abatement procedures. Thank you. End of comment from David Cronshaw. And that completes the written comments that were received.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, we do have one person who is, has their hand raised as an attendee. So let's see if they're going to make a comment on items not on the agenda. I will promote them to a panelist now.
Okay. I'm not sure. You said we have a person with their hand raised.
Yes,
Yeah.
so Barb Filkins, if you can hear me and you have a comment on an item not on the agenda, you have 3 minutes. You can unmute yourself and
I'm on. I just want to make a quick comment. The voluntary noise abatement procedures at Oxnard, if you look back to even the beginning of the 2000 millennium, are still intact. The procedures have always been there as far as where you turn, where you fly, and what you do to be a good citizen. I would make the comment that right turns and right patterns are not always the safest. If you adhere to the normal noise abatement procedures or the normal pattern procedures, probably a lot of the issues would go away. And that's basically all I wanted to say. It's not a new issue.
No.
And it should be addressed as such.
Okay, thank you. Okay, public comments are closed. Is there any new business?
Chair, we do have a few items, starting with selection of new chair, vice chair, and chair were selected at the last meeting. As you know, the chair has determined he rather not accept the nomination. Mr. Flickinger, I don't know if you have anything additional you would like to add to that before we move through this item.
Okay, well, thank you for your vote of confidence. But I have some personal issues that I think may interfere with my being chair. So thank you for the opportunity.
So Chair, maybe you want to ask for a motion and comments.
Be appropriate to offer a request for nominations from the floor, Mr. Flickinger.
Okay, Adriana, would you be willing to chair?
There needs to be a nomination from the floor, sir.
Okay, I nominate Adriana. Is there-
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I,
Aye.
I'd like to nominate Bobby Williams as vice chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second that nomination, Bob Trimborn.
Okay, all those,
I have a question, discussion. I think it'd be great if Bobby wants to do this, given the situation we ran in with Mr. Flickinger and that Bobby's not here. Do we know if he's willing to accept the vice chair position?
Bobby served as vice chair and chair previously, so I don't think that should be a problem. I mean, ideally, we haven't run into this problem before.
okay. Did I have a second? For Bobby?
I'll second
Yes, by
that,
Mr.
Bob Trimborn.
Okay. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so it's so moved. Carried. There is a nomination and selection of chair and vice chair. Okay, the
Point of order, I believe Adriana becomes the chair now of the meeting.
Thank you. I can take it from here if you'd like.
okay,
Okay, let's move on to Article B, subject, which is the adoption of Resolution 7, authorizing the remote teleconference meetings of the Aviation Advisory Commission for a 30-day period. Adopt the attached Resolution 7, which is Exhibit 1, authorizing remote teleconference meetings of the Aviation Advisory Commission for a 30-day period pursuant to the Government Code Section 54953, Subdivision E of the Ralph M. Brown Act. Mr. Freitas, would you like to comment, please?
My only comment is that if this committee would like to hold the next meeting,
County.
the next meeting remotely, that you would have to adopt this resolution. It is for a 30-day period maximum. I know that committee member Weiss does not make him very happy of that, but that is kind of the rules and the parameters we have. Anna, just clarify, the next meeting is covered within the 30 days and we do not have to do a special, I believe.
Yes, that is correct.
So if this committee would like to do so, they would have to adopt this resolution. And that's my only comment.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Is
And
there a second?
I'll second Bob's Trimborn's approval. I second.
Thank you. Thank you. All in favor?
What discussion?
Oh, discussion. Thank you. Sorry.
So I'd like to hear Director Freitas's take. When he came on aboard, he felt the way things were done in Contra Costa County were done differently. And why is it that Ventura County is taking this this bill and its interpretation differently than other jurisdictions? I understand the transparency issue and so forth, but there's a redundancy here that just doesn't work for me. And we just all, other than myself, a bunch of stooges here, just go along with this ridiculousness of this thing.
So my comment to that is, first, I think we all hope that this does not continue for
Well,
much
we don't know that, Director. We don't know
question
that.
about it.
Perhaps Mr. Freitas can continue what he was speaking.
Yes, all I can tell you is that Contra Costa County Council there determined that the Board of Supervisors could blanketly approve not only for themselves, but all committees. We asked the same of our county council here in Ventura County, county council determined that was at risk for question or challenge, and will not approve that process here. That's all I can tell you at this point.
Okay,
So-
so Mr. Freitas, if you could clarify, do we have any other options at this point?
This commission does not. It's either you meet in person or you have this option for remote. You can't change the 30 days. This is what you have to do to have remote meetings, to adopt this resolution.
I see.
As I understand it, we can't meet in person because the Dr. Levin won't allow us to meet in person.
You would be at this point in conflict of what the orders of the county's health director would be, correct?
Is there further discussion?
Call for the question.
Well, just a
call-
moment, just a minute. I have something to add to this. If we, just for this evening, if we just vote on it now, 30 days from now will encompass the next meeting. So we don't have to go through this again, maybe.
That is correct. It's just one 30-day window for the next meeting. That is it.
Mm-hmm. And the next
It-
meeting's 28 days away.
Correct.
Assuming we're in the same emergency situation, this resolution will be at that meeting as well to be adopted again, looking forward another 30 days.
So it would be this committee's opportunity to accept to do that or not, depending on the circumstances at that time, correct?
Okay, at this point, let's call for the question. Is there further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Those opposed?
Okay.
The resolution is carried. Okay, let's move on to item C, the approval and authorization for the Director of Airports or designee to sign amendment number 2 to the consulting services contract with Nino and Moore Geotechnical and Environmental Services Consultants for the supplemental per and substance, soil and groundwater investigation of groundwater air at Oxnard Airport, raising the total amount of the contract by $201,800.57 to $363,018.47. Mr. Freitas?
And thank you, Chair. I will pass this to Dave Nafee from our office to provide some background and detail.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Mr. Director. This item comes before the commission, and this is addressing the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Review Board, which is another mouthful. And they have indicated to us that that the Department of Airports, on behalf of Oxnard Airport, is required to do geotechnical investigation and report on findings relative to the mouthful of what has been shortened, thankfully, to PFAS, PFAS. And,
Thank you, Mr. Nafee.
yes, and that is a substance that has been deemed a substance of concern, a chemical of concern, and at risk of groundwater contamination. And this is a statewide investigation. So the water boards, as we have come to call them, have directed all airports that have dispensed the firefighting foam that that Oxnard Airport has to conduct these investigations. We received letters from the water boards, and we do as directed. And so this particular item comes at a price that exceeds our authority to move forward without board action. And so we're bringing this before the commission for that purpose. So the First Amendment, so we entered into a contract last January at this time for $137,000 and change to initiate the investigation. And then we had a small amendment to that to cover some unforeseen expenses related to night work and additional laboratory investigation that was needed. And then we submitted that to the water boards. They came back and says, we need you to do more. We need you to widen out your investigation in order to reach a where you can't detect this stuff any longer. And so we've received a bid back from Nino and Moore, who's our contractor for this purpose. And that item is for an additional $201,800.57 for a total now of $363,018.47. And our recommendation is that we go ahead and recommend to the board that they do that.
Thank you, Mr. Nafee. Is there a motion to approve?
I
Yeah,
move the staff recommendation.
Okay, I'll second.
Discussion.
Yes, I believe we should go back to the water boards and suggest that they split the difference with us. I'm adverse to anting up the additional dollars based on the water boards dictating to us what we should do here. So I would suggest amending this bill to split the difference.
If I may respond to that, this is one of those favorite unfunded mandates. I had the same issue up in Contra Costa County, Buchanan Field. They are within their legal rights, the water boards, regional water boards, to mandate testing in this manner, and we have no recourse other than which is happening, trying to get federal dollars to reimburse us for this action. You know, the catch-22 that we're in is that the FAA, federal entity, requires AFFF, the foam that has this PFAS in it, is the only approved. Anybody who has commercial service airport must use this foam. And in the old days, you had to discharge it 2 times a year to prove that it was working, which put it in the environment. So most airports have been doing this for decades, and now it's a chemical that's determined to be of concern, as Mr. Nafee mentioned. So we could not get reimbursed from this state agency. There is no mechanism to do that. The best we can hope for is that there will be federal dollars to reimburse us down the road, which has had many airports in discussion, and we're working with lobbyists to try to head in that direction.
So, and when's the last time we've had commercial service at Oxnard Airport?
You are correct. It's been many years, but we've maintained that certificate and that equipment, which at this point, you know, again, there is, that's part of the challenge with this chemical. It is a quote, a forever chemical. So it's in places I've seen it that have been discharged 20 or 30 more years ago. It's still traceable. And the detection levels that they were asking for are parts per trillion, which was described to me as if you were traveling from Earth to the sun, you are 6 inches off the ground here on Earth. That's the magnitude of the challenge. So.
Keith, you mentioned that and I have a whole series of questions, but I'll wait on some of those. But the one you just brought up there, I want to ask about. You said they used to require it be discharged twice a year. Is that still the case? Do we still discharge it?
No, Mr. Nafee and team purchased an expensive piece of equipment, and now it's a closed system, so it does not discharge out into the environment.
So maintaining our Part 139 certification, which requires this chemical be available, even though, as Mr. Weiss mentions, we haven't had passenger air service here for what, 14 years? It will not be the case that continuing to have this chemical on site, that we will continue to have pollution problems with the soil. Is that true with this new equipment?
That is a correct statement, and concurrently, the FAA is working on a replacement foam product as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do have a series of questions about this, and thank you guys. So it looks like in 2019, you contracted with them and a study was done and we thought it was done. But 2020, they came back and now they're coming back yet again. So does this include, I guess one of my questions is, does this include mitigation? It wasn't clear to me from the write-up whether this was just a discovery process or is it discovery and mitigation?
I have my thoughts, but Dave, you want to take first shot at it?
Sure. Commissioner Tannehill, thank you for the question. Yes, the first letter we received was in 2019. We did a small study and then an initial investigation, and then closed that project, came back, started this next project, which is being amended for the second time. So this really just is an investigation activity, and we would see mitigation, whatever form that takes down the road. And so our hope is that before we get to any discussion about mitigation, that there's a federal standard put in place and federal dollars made available for meeting that standard. At the moment, this is just a statewide activity, and California is looking to be out front with this type of proactive approach to identifying substances that are of concern. And so we as airports in the system and having released this chemical into the environment, federal requirements as they are, it did happen. And so we're moving as directed by the state water boards, who has the jurisdiction to be able to mandate this.
So
Thank you, Director.
I would like to add to that is this is the exact same process that happened up in Contra Costa County. Did initial study, they came back and said, oh, that's nice. Now we want you to do additional analysis. And so the same thing has happened, and we don't yet have a remediation program. It will be after this next round, we would expect. And going back to Commissioner Weiss's comments about challenging, the other challenge we have is that the Wake State Water Board has the ability, should we not comply, to fine us $10,000 per day if we do not follow their directive, just to throw that out there. So that's additional hammer they have over each airport, each entity. Anyway.
So, and thank you for that, Director Nafee and Director Freitas. So can we expect that this will get it done, that this will have the investigation? I don't know whether it's the whole 230 acres you have to look at, but you're pretty confident that this is it, that once we spend this $363,000, we will have the study that the state requires of us?
Yeah.
I'll
thank-
I'll take the first shot of that, Dave.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I would expect is from this, we will have at least what the impacts are from our discharges. And as Dave mentions, we haven't started the remediation yet. So, would I expect that this number in the end might be $1 million or more? It could be, for sure. Dave, I don't know if you have anything more to add to that.
No, that's it. I mean, I think to directly answer the question, the hope is that we wind up with the level of detection that the state has indicated they desire, which is to not be able to detect it at the perimeters that we've suggested. So yeah, we're hoping we get through the investigation, and then we can take a pause while all the regulatory activity occurs to figure out what to do about it.
And I hope that the commission is clear. Airport staff does not find this acceptable either. We're working every opportunity we can to get, again, it's difficult for us when one federal entity tells us you must do this, and another state entity says, you've got a problem and now you need to fix this. That clearly is a problem for us and every airport in the country, quite frankly. And to expand, this chemical is in dental floss, Teflon pans, Scotch Guard, your hamburger wrappers, and it's been in the environment for decades in those items I mentioned, obviously. So it is in many places.
Thank you for that. I have one final thing, and it's on the numbers. If I understand this right, it's a $202,000 bump to our expenses for Oxnard. There are some financials provided along with this item, but they have different numbers in there. They show appropriations going down or, increasing, I'm sorry, by a -105 and a -31. So I guess my question is, what's going to be the fiscal impact? I have in my head that Oxnard is budgeted to lose $1.6 million this year. Will this mean it will now be budgeted to lose 1.8 million, or how does it all play out financially?
I have that in director's report, some summary of financial, which I think will help overall. Maybe that'll be helpful. If not, we could bring it, agendize it for a future item.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we can move on to director's report. Mr. Freitas.
Okay, I have a few items. First, I'd like to recognize longtime airport tenant Art Phillips, passed away January 6th, 2020. Anyway, been with obviously Camarillo for a long time, and wanted to recognize Art. Moving on, next item. Happy to report Congresswoman Brownlee visited Camarillo Airport last month. She's been very supportive of the airports over the last many years, continues to be so. And we were talking about the recent infrastructure bills that should help with airport funding. And she was excited to throw her support once again to Camarillo and Oxnard airports. Noise issues, as you can take away, obviously, from the public comment. Both airports, we continue to work on noise issues, Oxnard in particular. Most recently, we continue to have, I mentioned in December, we had our noise forum. Dave Nafee and I have continued to meet with residents near Oxnard Airport. Steve Tannehill is one of those members, and trying to refine what we can do. This is a long-term investment on our part. As I mentioned before, we're starting with the hiring in the next several months of somebody dedicated specifically to focus on noise issues. In the interim, Dave Nafee from our office is working on new things like pilot noise abatement brochures. He is working on new technology for flight tracking at the airports. It helps, flight track the airplanes, identify who they are, what altitudes they're flying at, so that we can work with pilots. And then lastly, I personally spoke with one of the top noise pilots, or I should say the aircraft that was triggering the most noise complaints over at Oxnard. It was based up, flight school based out of Santa Paula Airport. I spoke personally with the owner, talking about our concerns and the issues. She was gracious enough to add our Fly Neighborly link directly onto her website, so that her pilots, and obviously educating her pilots about the noise concerns, specifically at Oxnard in Camarillo. So, Dave, anything specifically I missed on that noise efforts at this point? Dave, I think you're on mute, maybe.
Thought I was tapping the screen. Okay. Yeah, no, I thought you covered that pretty well.
Okay.
But happy to field any questions.
Joint powers agreement. This was a sensitive issue for the city of Camarillo. There was a letter that came from my predecessor to the city manager many months ago that caused some concerns. Specifically, there was a letter that's in your packet that came from the county administrator, Mike Powers, that reassured the city of Oxnard of things that we are no longer trying to push the issue or look at the issue of changing the joint powers agreement. It has worked well for 45 years. No expected changes to that. And then the concern that we were trying to solicit or bring in commercial service and or cargo operations to Camarillo Airport. Both those were dispelled. That is not something we have or are planning to pursue. That seems to have been taken fairly well. I said the same comments. They did a recent survey of their constituents, City of Camarillo did, and I attended that meeting to basically say the same thing, which was also well received. So we seem to be on a better footing with the City of Camarillo at this point. This committee, one of this committee's favorite, the private hangar lease agreement. We continue to work through language. The big stumbling blocks when I first came were mandatory security stickers on all vehicles. That has been removed. And then the last was adding in a mediation clause that has been added in. And now we're just trying to finalize what that language means, what would be mediated. And due to timing, CAHOTA, the association between Oxnard and Camarillo, they have an all members meeting scheduled for March 19th. So they'd like to bring, when we get that draft document to them, I was hoping to bring this document this month or next to this committee and to the authorities. But because their meeting is March 19th and they want to bring it and discuss it with their association, I don't expect to bring that draft agreement to this committee and the authorities and until April meeting. So that's kind of the plan right now. This commission has also brought up the Teal Club specific plan. The airport is working on its comments to that project, which is in the city of Oxnard, adjacent to the Oxnard Airport. I do also want to mention that the Airport Authority on Thursday's meeting on the 10th of this month, in a couple of days, is also going to hear a presentation from the city of Oxnard on the Portofino project, also near the Oxnard Airport. So that is coming up on Thursday. Anybody interested in attending, observing that? One of the airport projects, it's in the business park. It's called the Darling Development. That is going before the city of Camarillo. They've got a mitigated netting deck that is going for public hearing, and that's scheduled for February 9th in a couple of days. We have a current tenant is the county's animal services. They have leased property from the airports department. They are looking to do some expansion. We've got some additional properties, not aviation, it's revenue generating properties. So we're looking to allow them to expand. They pay us rent for that property. But they're looking to basically rebuild on the site that they're on and get a little larger expansion. Might be as much as another 3.5 acres. Their current site's 4.5 acres, so they might be adding as much as 3.5 acres or thereabouts. It's already mentioned earlier, Super Bowl is coming. There are specific airports in the LA area that do not include Camarillo or Oxnard, although our tenants and the airport are preparing, should overflow be needed, that we would help the FBOs at the airports park additional aircraft. So we've kind of got a plan in play should additional space be needed at both airports. And let's see, want to talk about an item that Commissioner Weiss had brought up a couple times, said he never got the answer previously. So we're going to give him the answer right now, which is, what amount of time does it take staff to prepare for and participate in each of these meetings, and then when we are required to do the special meetings? So typically it's about 20 hours all in for staff time for regular meetings like tonight. And when we had to do the special meeting last week, that is obviously much shorter and smaller packet, but that's about 5 hours. So there's no direct cost to staff because they're management staff. It's just a thing that we do, starting at 7 and goes to however long it takes. But there is an impact because obviously these hours spent could be, directed towards other airport issues, noise abatement, new development, things like that. So there is that impact. And just an FYI item, Supervisor Herber has selected Scott Aquina to replace Bruce Hamus, his vacancy, and that is supposed to go before the Board of Supervisors at tomorrow's meeting. And I just want to give some financial numbers because the numbers come up from time to time. In general, and I'll talk operating maintenance, and Commissioner Tannehill, mentions the loss at Oxnard of 1.5 million. I'm not sure what number he's looking at, but in general, the O&M operating maintenance budget revenue at the end of the year for Oxnard is negative about $4,000 a year. And I'm just looking over, prior to depreciation, it's about a $4,000 loss, and that's the average over the last 5 years. Whereas Camarillo is a revenue surplus of about $2.6 million. So it's an airport system. Obviously we have cost centers, so I can tell you those numbers of what it costs, and we obviously need to continue and will focus on Oxnard and development there. But that's just kind of the numbers. And our surplus, revenue reserves, I should say, at this point for the airport enterprise fund is about $14 million. So those are significant reserves. Now we use those, and even I think there was a question about we had a surplus or reserves of 14 million, and now they're down to 9 million. I think Steve pointed that out. Yeah, and he's right. That has to do with us building, the runway at Oxnard. He'll see it at the next update. We just got a check for $7 million in reimbursement from that project. So, we got to upfront this money and then it comes back to us reimbursement. But that's kind of just the general numbers. Obviously, we have some work to do with Oxnard, but that's kind of an overview, at least a high level overview of the fiscal part of the airports. And that's all I have, unless there's specific questions.
I've got a question, Director Freitas. Where are we at? Are we having any discussions on bringing in carriers back into Oxnard Airport?
I can tell you we haven't had direct conversations right now, but all of those things, and I have community members that are obviously very interested in looking at that. So that is something that is on the list, one of many. And as a part of development, obviously service that the community wants is something we would entertain and pursue.
Is the Department of Airports working on that?
If you're asking
Because we
right
have in the
now,
past. I don't know
we
what's
are-
happened now.
we're not working on that today, Commissioner Weiss.
That's sad. That's very sad. Sad to hear that.
We will take that as your vote to do so.
A couple comments, Director Freitas. First of all, thank you for the financial. It wasn't clear to me whether we had received the federal money for the runway and now spent it, thereby taking us down to 9, or whether it was, as you described, you spent ahead and the reimbursement is to follow. So good to hear. Thank you for that. As another comment, it'd be wonderful if we got some of the Super Bowl business in our airports. That's good business. We may be too far away for it, but it'd be great if some of those planes came to our airports and generated some economic activity in Ventura County. With respect to the financials, Director Freitas, I hear you. I mean, I'm looking at what's in the package today, and it shows, so far year to date, Oxnard has an operating loss of $653,000. My own opinion is depreciation is real, and I understand it's a non-cash expense, but if we have things that are wearing out that will have to be replaced, then depreciation is the appropriate way to account for it. So, barring some understanding that these are intangible assets that are not really depreciating, it's just a financial transaction. I think understanding our income before depreciation as we do is the right way to do it. And then the other comment I would make is I do understand that Camarillo generates a surplus, and that surplus covers the shortfall at Oxnard, and I do understand it's a system. But I still, my whole career training is if you have two business lines and one is subsidizing the other, that needs to be understood and explained, and not just, that's money that could be spent at Camarillo doing other things. I'm not saying it shouldn't be given to Oxnard, but I think we do need to understand correctly that Camarillo generates a surplus, and part of that surplus goes to keeping, the lights on at Oxnard.
No question about it. It is a huge opportunity to do certain things. And as Commissioner Weiss points out, it's the only airport that allows commercial service. Those are things we will continue to work at to maximize the opportunities. Again, at both airports, they're unique, and there's opportunities at both airports that need to be fully utilized and looked into. There is one item that I forgot to mention that I'd like to mention. The Cloud9 update. This commission does ask on a regular basis is continuing to move through the process. At this point, we believe all items from our side have been addressed. We know that the Cloud9 folks have resubmitted their building application, and it's going through the city's process as we speak. So I did want to mention that. Sorry. Open to any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I am done with director's report.
Thank you. Let's move on to reports. Any comments on reports that need to be discussed? Correspondence. Any
Well, I'm
items?
sorry, and Adriana, I tried to catch your eye, but I just have my usual question. There was an incident at Oxnard. If we could get a description of what that incident was, please.
Dave, would you take that for us?
Yes, Commissioner Tannehill, this item should have been 0. The one item that was shown to be an aircraft incident was in fact OPD was called to assist with a homeless person on airport property. So that was it. No aircraft related incidents in December.
Good to know. Thank you, Director Nafee.
Any other issues with reports? Let's move on to correspondence. Any issues with correspondence? Hearing none, let's move on to commission comments. Any comments by commission members on matters deemed appropriate?
Yes, I've this continuing noise situation. As many of you know, I've lived here probably as long or longer than anyone in the Hollywood Beach area. And I must say, as I've commented before, back in the day when we had 3-4 carriers, you knew immediately when they were starting their engines, etc. There was no question, 5:30 in the morning. And I must say that I have not, the flight training noise, which we experienced in the beginning of, or the midterm of COVID, was noticeable, but I have not heard any kind of flyovers or anything. And maybe the patterns have changed, but I would ask Maggie Bird, who's over, if you're still living in the mobile home park over there off of 5th, maybe you're getting something, but you know, we need to distinguish between what's real and what's folks don't want in their backyard. I'm concerned and with the environmental situations that affect people's well-being, but you know, this new thing of wanting to shut down airports is absurd. And now we're going from noise to different environmental things, because it's either the noise or it's something else. So it can always be something. And for those of you that are new to the area, our airports here have been instrumental in different local disasters that we've had. And without having the availability of the airport, our county and the neighboring counties would have suffered great ills in addition to whatever fire or flooding results were felt. So let's be careful of these slippery slopes we're going down. When I first got on this airport commission, and I must say, was sometime after Adriana and Gary Jacobs, but we had someone from my same district and appointed by John Flynn that did his best. Steve somebody, another Steve from the 5th district that wanted to see to it that Oxnard Airport was shut down.
Are you
So,
talking about East Street, Mr. Weiss?
yeah, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Sorry. But
Remember that?
you know, it's one hand has to wash the other, and we need to have a cohesive thing. But when all hell broke loose with this new master plan study, it started off very calm, and it was about the flight schools, and then it got into other areas. So I'm seeing and I'm hearing things that aren't all up front. There's a lot underneath the rug, and I think we need to be cognizant of that. Very important to have access to airports here. Again, we're the largest county in the country without commercial flights coming into our airports. We should be ashamed of ourselves that we've gotten into this position. I was just up over in Monterey, Carmel, over the Pebble Beach weekend, and that Monterey airport, no one complains about it, and those jets are coming in and out of there, not to mention smaller planes 24/7, and they know that it's necessary for the viability, and big advertising campaigns about this is the place to fly out of, Monterey.
Mr. Weiss, I have a couple of comments to make, and actually I agree with you. I grew up in Santa Cruz, and I lived in Santa Cruz for the 1988 or 1989 Loma Prieta quake. At that time, Highway 17 from Santa Cruz to San Jose was shut down. The Highway 101 South, which would have led to San Jose, was shut down. And the only way to get out of Santa Cruz was to take a very long way around 101 up to Half Moon Bay, or to go down to Watsonville Airport and get on an airplane. Now, people don't understand, if it's never happened to them, what happens when you have a fairly significant earthquake and it shuts down roads. And so I do personally agree with you, and I would like to make a request of the airport. When I hear questions like tail numbers, you know, the numbers on aircraft are being hidden, and there's more and more aircraft coming, you know, I would like to know specifically, and I would like to request the airport, and I know you're working on it, that I want numbers. I want numbers, specifically documented numbers, reported monthly. You know, I don't want to hear, oh, there's more and more and more. It's like, how much more, from where to who? So, you know, I do agree, but, you know, as chair, I am making the request that when I get the comments like there's more and more and more, okay, how many touch and goes? How many of this, how many of that, etc. You know, so that we can actually compare, is there indeed an increase? Is there not an increase, and where it comes from?
If I may add something to that, Adriana,
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you and I agree with Steve completely. The one thing I do want to bring up is that I live on, right now I have a house on Sandpiper Way. And I have a hot tub on my rooftop deck, which I like to go up and use and stay in it. And I'm, of course, very sensitive to aircraft. I hear something and I can't have to look up and see what it's all about. And I have noticed very, very little traffic here. I'm about halfway between Woolley and Fifth Street. And there's just nothing happening overhead. I just can't even imagine. Once in a while, you know, occasionally there's something. So I totally agree with you.
I want to
Thank you,
see
Maggie.
reported numbers. And I think that that's absolutely essential. Are there further commission comments?
Commissioner
I
Trimble
have
has a comment that I do.
Mr. Director, I'd like to get a more detailed report on the Cloud9 situation. It seems like it's been dragging out an incredibly long time. I just want to know what the end game is and what's holding up the approval process. Thank you.
Thank you. That would be good. Other comments from the commission?
Yes, Chair Van de Graaff, first of all, let me say I fully support and agree with you that what we need are, what would be very, very helpful would be a breakdown of the monthly flights. How many are touch and goes, how many planes are coming here and spending the night, how many are itinerary, all that kind of information. So, you know, I share that desire for that kind of data, and I'll just express that. You know, the one thing I would say, a couple things. One is, you know, we're fortunate that the community that I know of that's calling in about complaints, there is no effort to shut down the airport. So we're fortunate that the citizens that are active about these flight schools, that's their sole concern, and they're not seeking to shut down the airport. I know that's been a problem in other communities, but to date, it's not a problem in our community. I would mention as well that we are kind of fortunate that we're airport rich. We have Santa Barbara Airport, a very robust regional airport that for many residents of Ventura County, it's the closest airport to them. We of course have Camarillo, we have Santa Paula, we have Burbank, we have LAX, and of course we have Point Mugu, which while not commercial, nonetheless is there in case of a disaster scenario. So we actually have quite a few airports, and when we had our meeting, our wonderful meeting at the Oxnard terminal that Director Freitas put together, that's one of the things that kind of was said by everybody, including the traffic controllers. We have an unusual situation because we have so many airports so close to each other. So I want to express that as well. And then finally, I would say I do live in the Westport community, and I can vouch for the planes flying overhead. I experience them. You know, we do get the numbers every month, the noise complaints, and they are down. As I think we got a letter from somebody saying, and I've seen it too, and I've talked to Director Freitas and Director Nafee that, hey, these planes are going right traffic. I've talked to the tower. So there's definitely been improvement. There's still work to be done. We all agree. But I can vouch that these complaints are real. I know many of the people, not all of them that complain, but I know many of them. And they are expressing what they are personally experiencing at their houses.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Well, being respectful of everyone's time, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian.
Everybody-
Thank you, everybody. Good to see you.